Okay, so we're live right now, just waiting for our guest to join us. About another handful of seconds, and we'll get started. Thank you so much, Mrs. Osmond, for being here, and Dr. Kalkowski, working remotely from two beautiful places, Big Bear, California, and Lake Tahoe, Nevada. I love it. That's great. All right. Down to a few more seconds. And for those of you that may be viewing already, we do have a bit.ly link that's scrolling at the bottom of our marquee there on the screen. So if you haven't had a chance to, please submit any questions relating to the Energy, Environment, and Utilities course and or the Ethnic Studies course that we'll be offering in the 21-22 school year. All right, I see 5 o'clock straight up, ladies. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. It is Thursday, July 15th, 2021. And we're here this evening introducing a couple of our new courses that we're so excited about here at Shadow Hills High School, offering in the 21-22 school year. With me today, they'll actually help me to go through our presentation. We have two of our most wonderful people here on campus. I'd like to introduce those two. We have Mrs. Amy Osmond, one of our social studies teacher and the department chair for us here at Shadow Hills High School with us this evening. In addition, we also have Dr. Sharon Kalkowski, one of our assistant principals that oversees our curriculum assessment and instruction with us here at Shadow Hills High School. So I want to welcome them too and thank them for being here tonight as we go through tonight's presentation. And so having said that, we do have our opening slide here. I just kind of wanted to go over just briefly a couple of things that we're going to be discussing. One is a quick overview, as I mentioned, of our Energy, Environment, and Utilities Pathway course. Dr. Kalkowski, our AP, will be reviewing that with you this afternoon. In addition, we'll also have an overview of our Ethnic Studies course, our 9th grade course that we'll be offering this year. All three of us will be discussing elements of that particular course and its introduction this year. And then finally, we'll go through a lot of the questions that have been submitted already through the bit.ly link. And again, for those of you who may be just joining us, we do have a bit.ly link available for you to submit any of your questions. It's a running marquee right at the bottom. So you can just type in that bit.ly link into your internet browser and submit any questions that you have. And for starters, just wanted to say thank you for those of you joining, in addition to thanking you for submitting those questions that we've opened up since the last 2 weeks. We provided you with that link to submit your questions. We have a handful of those. We've embedded a lot of those questions into our presentation. So thank you so much. And also thanking those parents who actually helped work on our WASC accreditation this past school year, where we started to actually talk a little bit about these particular courses that we're starting to offer this upcoming school year. So thank you once again for those of you that are joining us. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'd like to at this time hand over the presentation to Dr. Kalkowski, who will be reviewing our EEU pathway. Dr. K.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fajardo. Hello, Wonderful Nights families. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to introduce, very excited about our new EEU pathway, which is our Energy, Environment, and Utilities. It's part of our CTE program at Shadow Hills High School under the guise of Mr. Matthew Stanford, who, just a little secret, just had a new baby with his wife. So I want to do a shout out and congratulations to him with his beautiful daughter. And in year one, we're going to be having a clean energy technology program. Year two will be energy transmission and distribution. And our capstone year will be clean energy careers. So these three courses are predicated upon the fact that right now, California, and I'm looking over at the quick facts, will be 100% clean energy by 2045. So Desert Sands looked and said, what new pathways could we get in that really will support our new careers as we build in our communities? Green jobs industry growth, 105% by 2029, and looking at battery storage as the latest tech focus. And if you look at some of the new cars out there, it's amazing with our technology. So that's our EEU. And we have a few links here, and of course, this will be available to parents. But we talk about solar panel design, biodiesel, and inexpensive fuel. Of course, locally, our wind turbine design, we have that. That's a big focus in the Coachella Valley. We'll be taking students out on the field. We will have internships for students, externships for teachers, looking at hydroelectric power, circuit breakers, fuse data, renewable energy conversion, our environmental engineering, and again, battery storage, which is all part of the focus of the EEU pathway. And here are some of the careers that your children and students may be interested in. Energy efficiency evaluation specialist, an energy engineer. So we have lots of engineers out there right now, but if you look at universities, they're building their careers in energy technology programs, energy generation, power distribution technicians, certainly plant and field weatherization engineers, cable telecommunications installation maintenance technicians, line workers, network security administrators, and satellite systems engineers. And here are a few visuals for us. We'll also be working in collaboration with some of our other CTE programs and looking also and working with our science department and some of our other departments in building climatologists, environmental biologists, technicians, scientists. So these are skills that are transferable between pathways and between courses at the school. Environmental health, safety officer, response technicians. And finally, look at these questions. If your children could say yes to any one of these, please guide them. Someone who loves to travel, someone who's interested in mechanics, someone who's interested in programmable logic controllers or electronics. They want to build their engineering principles. They're interested in a career in energy production. Or if your child is interested in a career in environmental conservation, this could be the pathway for them. So next year we're going to launch. We have many, many students already signed up for the first year, and we will be also finishing out our aviation internship program with our local community, and a shout out to Bermuda Dunes Airport, who will continue to support us as we move forward with our EEU pathway as well. And we're very grateful for that support.
Thank you, Dr. K. And again, for those of you family members, community members, students, if you have any additional questions, by all means, feel free to either submit your questions through the bit.ly link. You'll see that in the scrolling marquee at the bottom, and or send us an email, and our contact information will be available at the end of the presentation. We'll make it available in our YouTube Live account, and this recording will also be posted there for your quick reference as well. We're pretty excited about this pathway. It excites me because I do know a couple of our parents who are actually involved in geothermal. They're engineers in the geothermal plant out here in Thermal, California, and they've already reached out to me and said, Mr. Fajardo, we are ready to work alongside you, your teacher, your students, because there is tremendous growth in the opportunities for those careers that kids can come in and easily start with 50, 60K a year, and that's without a college degree, because of the systems trainings that they provide our students. So while we're excited about this industry sector and the opportunities that we can provide our students, there's nothing but upside potential with this program, especially the synergy that we can create between the other pathways, as Dr. K pointed out. So thank you, Dr. K.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, so moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, our next course of study that we're introducing this next school year, it's an elective course called Ethnic Study. It's a semester course that we'll be offering starting next year. It's an optional course that we provided to our 9th grade students, and it's exciting for us because it falls in line with our notion of inclusivity here at Shadow Hills High School. And more importantly, it provides a lens of equity as it relates to the Desert Sands core values when it comes to those elements that do make up the values relating to equity. And so in a lot of ways, we're really excited about this course, not only because of the instruction that it's going to provide in building awareness to our students, but more importantly, as it relates to our inclusivity, as when we say Knights doing it right, and how those elements of our values of respect, integrity, greatness, honor, and teamwork all kind of come into play when it comes to these course offerings like ethnic studies. So having said that, what is ethnic studies? That's one of the questions that came to us by way of our parents. And again, for those of you that still would like to submit some questions, by all means, you can do that through the bit.ly link. It is an interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, and indignity, right? I hope I said that word right. With an emphasis on the experiences of people of color in the U.S. The course outline that we'll get into a little bit later that Ms. Osman, who's done some tremendous work on this with the district officials. We'll get into some of those specifics a little bit later in the presentation. Proponents of our ethnic studies program do believe that affirming the identities and the struggles of all groups of people, where our students can expand and continue to build on this notion of perspectives and better be able to kind of see themselves and their peers as the bigger story of the United States as we come together in all of our multidisciplinary or multi-ethnic groups that we have here, including a lot of our students that we pride ourselves on, who've really kind of been a big part of what we've done here is our students with disabilities. We have a big deaf and hard of hearing program, our severely handicapped program, and you can, sort of feel that vibe on campus. It's a very positive approach to what it is that we do and everything that we have to provide to our students here on campus. And one of the questions that also came in that was noted to me via email was, well, Mr. Fajardo, we hear a lot about critical race theory. Is that the same as ethnic studies or are they different? Well, we did a lot of research and in working with the district, we noted the two. And while critical race theory is a theory, it is not synonymous with ethnic studies. In fact, discussion of critical race theory is not included as part of our district's ethnic studies courses. And once again, Mrs. Osmond will get into some more detail about what it does include. And while we don't necessarily have a true and tried definition of critical race theory, did some research from Education Week, and this is how they define it, right? The critical race theory is an academic concept that's more than 40 years old. And while I mentioned it's not part of our ethnic studies program, the core idea that critical race theory is all about, it's about social construct, noting that racism is not necessarily the product of individual bias or prejudice, but it's also something that's embedded in the legal systems and policies. And that's as of recent from an article that came out of Ed Week in May of 2021. Versus what we position here and what we're positing is that our ethnic studies program more broadly uses critical thinking, which was one of our skill sets that we focused on this past school year, and problem solving, which is a focus for us this upcoming school year. And where we nurture an understanding of how these different groups have really struggled and worked together in the US, exploring concepts such as equality, justice, race, and ethnicity. So it's nothing new in the order of what we've been able to do. We run through a lot of our curriculum with our students when we have academic discussions centered around a lot of these different things. So we really want to say thank you to our parents who did submit the questions. So this way we can really kind of highlight the differences between what critical race theory is and what our ethnic studies program is really going to be all about. And speaking of which, the outcome. One of the things that we want to ensure is that we want to focus on the goal of our ethnic studies program for all of our students. And the goal really is to build a better appreciation of the contributions of the very different people, the different ethnicities that our American democracy is all about. To better understand the work and the struggle of all of the people, right, that put American principles of equality and freedom into practice. And more importantly, to better engage in the civic enterprise of ending racism and forging a society that's true to America's vision in terms of the flag salute that we recite every morning, where the last part of that phrase is liberty and justice for all. And as I mentioned, Ms. Osmond in a little bit, she'll get into a little bit more of the information that centers around the civic enterprise when it relates to the civic engagement model that we want to include as part of our ethnic studies program. So again, for those of you that submitted the question about what the goal and the outcome are, thank you very much. And if you haven't had a chance to submit your questions, by all means, we do have a bit.ly link there. We're checking on any questions that may be coming through for you. So thank you once again. So at this point, I just wanted to take some time to give you a little bit of a brief history in terms of the history of ethnic studies. So here's a quick visual for your quick reference. You can see starting all the way back to 1964 at Merritt Junior College, the first Black Studies program was introduced there in 1967. Fast forward a few more years there, ethnic studies as a curricula. It had its beginnings rather at San Francisco State University. And then fast forwarding a few more years later there in 1994, you could see that Berkeley High School became one of the first high schools to offer ethnic studies. And then of course in 2016, Assembly bill that was created and provided as an opportunity for the state board to adopt began in 2016, where the State Board of Education adopted it in March, on March 18th of 2021. So you can see it's had a long history of really kind of making its way to present date. And more importantly, you can see here as we've come through the years in, we could see that in 2020, I'm going to fast forward to that, where ethnic studies did become a one semester future graduation requirement, starting with the class of 2030. Obviously, that is 2026 or 27 for freshmen. That cohort in 2030 would have been the first cohort to graduate with that requirement. And we know that this, and while that may be a requirement in some districts, it's not necessarily a requirement for us in Desert Sands because it is an elective at this point. We're waiting on the governor to sign off on that to become, official law, if that becomes mandated for us to offer. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for us to pilot this program. And more importantly, to give our students a voice to elicit feedback, our parents a voice to elicit feedback, to see what other elements that we can include in this particular course offering. So that's a little bit of the history behind ethnic studies. And then somebody had submitted a question as it relates to possibly, achievement and outcomes as it relates to academics. There's some research out of Stanford University that did kind of position ethnic studies as an opportunity to really build on the inclusivity and the awareness on students. And as a result of that research, what they concluded in seeing those schools that had already introduced this program, they saw some GPA improvements of students by 1.4 grade points. There was an increase in attendance and an increase in credit attainment. And then the NEA, the National Education Association, also ran some studies where they did see some positive outcomes and social outcomes as a result of affording this opportunity to the students in the schools that they researched. Now, having said that, let's really kind of transition to a little bit about what the model curriculum has to offer. And at this point, I'd like to have Mrs. Osmond kind of get into a little bit more about what that model curriculum looks like. And once again, I'm going to say this again, if you haven't had a chance to submit your questions, by all means, please do that at the bit.ly link that's scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Mrs. Osmond, please.
Thank you. Happy Thursday and welcome. We are excited to offer this for two very important reasons. The first is the ethnic studies curriculum will help students understand themselves in our history. They will see how other groups have struggled and worked together and how those groups have succeeded together. And when a student can see themselves in that story, it's powerful. That's why it will help increase their attendance and their academics and their social emotional learning, because the relevance of hearing their own voice through other people's stories is going to be super impactful. The second thing that it'll do is it'll help the students understand each other. They will see the stories of other groups and how they've contributed to the successes of democracy or the successes of California and the United States. So this curriculum is all about students just understanding themselves and other people. It's going to be totally inclusive. It's going to teach them about equality for all people, justice for all people, how all people have contributed, and it's going to acknowledge and honor the contributions of our four foundational groups and others. So our African American groups, our Asian American and Pacific Islander groups, our Chicano and Latino groups, and our Native Americans. And by doing that, the students are going to see how all of our stories intersect and sort of work together to make everything great that we see around us. The curriculum is going to be done thematically. It's going to have a lot of area for inquiry and for curiosity. It's going to provide a lot of diverse examples and case studies. It's going to start out as a standalone elective, but of course, these voices, these perspectives will be integrated in other contents like government and US history and world history, English, even science, math. The contributions of other people are valuable in all contents. And the most exciting thing, in my opinion, about ethnic studies is that it's going to be the first opportunity for students to learn about the California State Seal of Civic Engagement. That is also coming this year. It's going to be something that they can add to their diploma. something that they can add to their college or their job applications in the future. And the ethnic studies class has a whole entire unit on how students have a voice and how they can make an impact on their communities or on the larger communities. So this is their very first introduction that empowers them to take control in our community. The ethnic studies curriculum is going to be responsive to the student experience. It's going to allow students to be responsible for their own experience. It's going to help them socially and emotionally develop their own foundation, but also develop the foundation of understanding for others, because it is entirely inclusive for all students, regardless of race, ethnicity, class, gender, citizenship, sexuality, or ability. It's for everybody. And then for the instructor side, the ethnic studies model is going to be easy for teachers to use. They're going to have tremendous professional development. It's very collaborative, and we're going to have an array of amazing resources, lesson plans and sources and documents and video clips and just everything that a person could need to make this a positive experience for both teacher and student. So on the next two slides, you'll see Mr. Fajardo went over the timeline of ethnic studies in general. In May of this year, the district picked it up, and I mentioned it's going to be collaborative for the teachers. Well, this effort is very collaborative for the district. So in May, they started an advisory panel, and they elicited feedback on the proposal. Teachers, administrators, parents, everybody was allowed to put their voice into this mix. That was in May. And then if we go one more, so far from that panel, the course has been provisionally approved through a curriculum council. We are doing more feedback on the specific units of study, more feedback on the topics and the resources. So this is just a lot of voices coming together to make this an amazing offering for our students. And then this month, hopefully, the board will consider approval.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Osmond. And again, for those of you that haven't had a chance to submit your question before I hand it back over to Dr. Kalkowski, she's going to get into a little bit more of the elements, including student voice and the feedback that we received as a result of some of the surveys the district and both the school have concluded as it relates to just the overall feel of climate and culture on campus. Again, reminding you, submit your questions if you haven't done so already. Someone just recently submitted a comment, and I just wanted to make sure that, well, Dr. K, I'll let you read the comment because I think it was intended for you. So with that, I'm going to bring back Dr. K.
Hi again, everybody. Thank you so much. Well done, Ms. Osmond. It's such a pleasure to work with you as the department chair in social science. You're awesome. Yes, indeed. I do want to just share that a couple of comments have come in, and one, the most recent. Thank you for creating and offering this course. It will continue to build on the great foundation the school has built for inclusivity and empowering our students. So thank you for that comment, anonymous and whomever. I appreciate, and we appreciate that. And then two, another question came in. Will their child be able to choose a different class if placed in ethnic studies? And the answer to that is yes. We have an alternative course for you, and so not to worry on that at all. In addition, so what I want to speak about is, in addition to the NEA, the National Education Association, finding that student voice brings students into inclusivity and it ups their attendance, etc. at school, we here at Shadow Hills High School and in Desert Sands Unified School District, we look at the Panorama survey. So parents, you've probably heard that a million times. Yes, indeed, you're going to get another survey this year. But we've distilled some of the data from that, and we have found, in fact, how important is it to you to have an ethnic studies course available. Student voice said 41.7%. It's very important that they have a high school experience that perhaps speaks to their group or their strengths and things that they want to learn more about others, as Ms. Osmond said earlier. 90% of our students at our school, again, this is distilled from the Panorama survey, said indeed we feel very safe at our school, and that's a fantastic number. That speaks to the fact that Shadow Hills High School already has a large inclusivity, on campus. We have many clubs and support and CTE and offerings and AP, etc. 91% of the students agree that Shadow Hills High School is supportive and an inviting place for students to learn. I think this next data statistic is important, however. During the past 12 months, 71% of students said how many times on school property that they may have been made fun of because of their looks or the way that they talk. And I think this is indicative of high school in general and certainly middle school in general. So that's part of what the intent of the ethnic studies and part of the vision and the responsibility of our educators is to make students and all students feel included and that they're not made fun of and that everybody appreciates and they respects the differences and the uniqueness in the student population.
And if I may, on that, Dr. K, as part of the teacher leadership team here with Ms. Osmond here, ourselves included, I think all of us want to see these numbers at 100%. And certainly, while we think that the 90% figures are great, we still have 9 to 10% of our students that may feel otherwise. Yeah. And more so the case with the gap between those that feel that they've been made fun of because of maybe the way they dress, the way they look, and that could be a variety of things and the way they talk. And so opportunities like this, where we do give students a voice and we educate them on building tolerances and really appreciating people's differences and celebrating, our differences, while at the same time celebrating who we are as Knights, is going to be that much more, I think, of an important element that builds on already the strong, positive school culture that we have, and certainly the climate that we have. And so thank you for sharing those stats. And speaking of which, we do have the last slide in terms of the team, Dr. K.
Yes, so we had an extensive interview process, and we're so excited to announce that Mr. Raymond Perez is going to be coming to us as one of our new ethnic studies teachers, and he comes from John Glenn Middle School, and he brings a wealth of veteran experience and excitement, and he's going to work with our 9th graders, and we're very excited to welcome Mr. Raymond Perez. And then Mrs. Allison Ryder, whom I had the pleasure of teaching at CSUSB, and she is absolutely marvelous. She comes to us as our 2nd ethnic studies teacher, and she's going to bring a wealth of community experience and what it means to have worked in other realms other than education. And she's going to be a wonderful new addition to our staff at Shadow Hills High School, and we're very excited to welcome that team.
Awesome. We don't have their photos yet, but in my summer dispatch updates for those of you parents, and thank you for submitting always your great ideas as to what else we should include in my dispatch updates that I send out. Well, during the summer, they're not weekly, but during the school year, they're weekly. But in the next summer update, we'll have included their bios, some photos of the new teachers. And you know me, we always like to celebrate our new folks and the onboarding of our new staff members. So thank you for the opportunity to present them to you formally today. So you're the first ones to know who our ethnic studies teachers are outside the team here internally. So with that, I'll conclude with our final slide. Desert Sands, and kudos to Dr. Wood for doing all the work. He may be viewing, so thank you, Dr. Wood, for putting together such a wonderful resource that's available on the district website. In fact, I'm going to click on it so you can see it here. I'll open it up inside the screen. But if you do have additional questions as it relates to ethnic studies, they do have on the sidebar a fact sheet, both in English and in Spanish, available for you. There's some information relating to the timeline in terms of how we evaluated the course, the adoption procedure, the introduction to the actual course. So if you want to see the actual course outline that is indicative of the different lessons that are scripted out for you, by all means, you can go to this site, Desert Sands or dsusd.us, and just do a keyword search for ethnic studies, and you can find this page on the district's website. But I'm going to go back to the slide, if I may, our concluding slide. So if you do have any questions, parents, students, community members, as it relates to the energy, environment, utilities course, or if you have ideas, or if you have people that we should network with and want to introduce us to, please, by all means, email us, reach out. You can call me, you can email us. This is not the only time we're going to be discussing, these course offerings. As new courses open up, we're going to be doing the same type of format, and your feedback is essential because our school is your school, and we want to reflect what the community needs are, and we certainly are open to any opportunities to elicit any of your ideas at any time. That concludes our presentation for today. We allocated 30 minutes and we're at 29 minutes and 40 seconds. So thank you, team, Mrs. Osmond, Dr. K. You guys are wonderful. And once again, this video will be made available on our school's YouTube channel. Thank you, parents, and always remember that nights do it right. That was your cue, ladies.
Right.
Thank you so much. Right? Have yourselves a great and wonderful day. Thank you all.
Everybody.